Raghav, Meera, Ananya, and the silent shadows of their home. What began as a normal family soon spiraled into a deadly web of manipulation, fear, and murder that no one could escape. Please subscribe for daily new update of Crime Story and watch till end. In 2017, Raghav Sharma moved to Texas after years of working small jobs across different American states. He hoped for a stable life and wanted to rebuild himself after a failed business in India. When he met Meera through a family friend, everything seemed to fall into place. Meera was a hard-working Indian immigrant raising her 19-year-old daughter, Ananya, on her own. She worked long hours at a grocery store and spent the rest of her time taking care of her home. Raghav saw their situation as a chance to finally settle down and feel rooted again. Meera believed he could bring stability, support, and a sense of family that she had been missing for years. At first, the marriage appeared normal. Raghav tried to impress Meera's relatives and neighbors by being helpful and showing interest in community events. He greeted everyone politely and often spoke proudly about his new family. Meera felt hopeful, believing she had made the right choice for herself and her daughter. But inside the house, the atmosphere was different. Ananya, who had just started college, never felt entirely comfortable around Raghav. He watched her too closely, asked unnecessary questions about her daily routine, and commented on her friendships. His eyes followed her whenever she moved around the house, and she felt a strange tension that she could not explain to her mother. Over the following weeks, Raghav started controlling smaller details of their lives. He insisted on knowing where Ananya was going, when she would return, and who she planned to meet. He checked household bills, questioned Meera about expenses, and acted irritated whenever something happened without his knowledge. Meera thought he was simply trying to take responsibility for the family finances. She assumed he was adjusting to his new role as a husband and stepfather. Ananya, however, sensed a different energy. She noticed how quickly his mood changed whenever Meera wasn't around, and how he hovered too close during daily activities. Raghav's behavior became more intense as the months passed. He rearranged Ananya's study schedule, saying it was for her improvement. He pushed her to avoid friends who visited their home. He even insisted on reading her class messages, claiming that he wanted to protect her from distractions. Ananya felt trapped, but struggled to explain the feeling clearly. She feared that she might sound disrespectful or ungrateful toward a man her mother trusted. The tension inside the house quietly grew, unnoticed by outsiders. Relatives who visited occasionally thought the family looked normal. Meera, exhausted by long work shifts, remained unaware of the silent discomfort surrounding her daughter. Raghav used this to his advantage. He acted extra considerate whenever Meera was home, offering to cook or clean just to maintain his image. But when she left for work, his presence became heavy and unsettling. Ananya began staying longer at college, avoiding home whenever possible. She used library hours as an excuse, hoping to escape the constant feeling of being watched. Raghav started keeping track of even these extended study hours. His questions became sharper, and his suspicion grew. The house, once hopeful and filled with the promise of a new beginning, slowly turned into a space of quiet fear and emotional pressure. Ananya sensed something darker forming, unaware that the uneasy feeling she carried would soon evolve into a dangerous reality that neither she nor her mother could escape. Raghav's behavior toward Ananya slowly shifted from controlling to something more complicated and confusing. After months of observing her every step, he began presenting himself as the only person who truly understood her. He watched her closely when she returned from college, noting her tiredness or frustration, and used those moments to make her believe he cared more than anyone else in the house. He tried to make small gestures that could appear fatherly from the outside, but they carried an uncomfortable weight that Ananya could not properly explain. Ananya's resistance to him made him even more determined to pull her emotionally closer. He sensed her discomfort, yet treated it as a challenge. Whenever Meera left for work, the atmosphere in the home changed. Raghav became overly attentive, standing too near or continuously monitoring her activities. He often hovered around while she studied, pretending to check on household tasks. These moments built a silent pressure that made Ananya feel suffocated, but she remained unsure of how to respond without creating conflict for her mother. Raghav's manipulation grew stronger as he began planting doubts in Ananya's mind. He subtly hinted that Meera did not value her enough, using ordinary situations as examples to distort her thinking. He pointed out moments when Meera forgot small details or came home too tired to talk, presenting them as signs of neglect. Ananya started feeling emotionally drained, confused by the strange dual worlds she was living in, one where she trusted her mother fully and another where Raghav tried to convince her she was alone. The emotional pressure became a daily experience. Raghav used guilt, concern, and false care to pull Ananya into an emotional dependence. He made her feel that confiding in him was easier than explaining her worries to her mother, especially since Meera was exhausted and busy with work. Over time, Ananya found herself trapped in a cycle where she avoided confrontation but also avoided trusting him. She felt caught between fear and confusion, unable to understand why her stepfather's presence disturbed her so deeply. Raghav's pretend affection became a tool to isolate Ananya from her friends as well. He subtly criticized the people she met outside and questioned why she needed them when she had a family at home. He made her feel guilty for spending time with others, suggesting that they might lead her into bad decisions. Slowly, her social circles shrank because it was emotionally easier to withdraw than to face his constant interrogation. The more Ananya pulled away, the more persistent Raghav became. Meera began noticing that her daughter looked stressed and restless, but she assumed it was due to college workload. She had no idea that Raghav was behind Ananya's anxiety. Raghav maintained his friendly, supportive personality in front of her, carefully hiding his manipulative behavior. Ananya's daily life turned into a secret struggle. Each morning she hoped for peace, but by evening she felt like she was losing control of her own thoughts. Raghav's influence was like a shadow that never left, even when he wasn't in the room. She kept her worry to herself, trying to stay strong, unaware that this emotional pressure was only the beginning of a much darker chapter that would soon unfold within the family. As the months passed, the atmosphere in the Sharma household grew heavier, and small cracks in the family's stability began to show. Meera noticed unusual patterns in their finances. Bills that should have been manageable were suddenly higher, and automatic transfers appeared that she didn't remember authorizing. At first, she assumed it was a banking error or some overlooked fee, but the amounts were too specific, too regular, and too neatly hidden within other expenses. One evening, after returning from a long shift, Meera sat down to quietly review her bank statements. She felt a cold shock run through her when she discovered repeated transactions sent to an account she did not recognize. The name on the receiving end looked oddly familiar, and after checking again, she realized it was connected to Ananya. Confused and worried, she tried to understand why her daughter would be transferring money without telling her. The discovery bothered her so deeply that she could not sleep that night, and she waited until morning to ask Ananya privately. When she approached her daughter about the transfers, Ananya froze. Her hands trembled, and she avoided eye contact as if she feared something terrible would follow. After a long, emotional pause, the truth finally came out. She confessed that Raghav had been manipulating her for months, controlling her decisions, influencing her emotions, and forcing her to follow his instructions. He had persuaded her to move money using Meera's account, telling her it was necessary and that she should trust him. Ananya confessed she felt too frightened to question his actions, and she revealed the emotional pressure he had used to keep her silent. Meera felt her world collapse instantly. She struggled to understand how she had lived in the same house without noticing the manipulation that had taken hold of her daughter's life. The guilt was overwhelming. She felt as if she had failed to protect the one person she cherished the most. For hours after the confession, Meera sat motionless, trying to absorb everything. She kept replaying small moments in her mind: Raghav's sudden mood swings, Ananya's stressed expressions, the forced silences at home. Each memory now carried a new meaning she had never noticed before. Meera confronted Raghav later that day. In the privacy of their bedroom, she questioned him about the transfers, about his behavior, and about the emotional harm done to Ananya. Instead of remorse, she witnessed a side of him she had never seen clearly before. His face turned cold, and he showed no sign of guilt. He insisted that everything happening in the house was under his control and warned Meera to stay silent. His confidence in his own dominance frightened her to the core. After the confrontation, Meera realized she could no longer trust the man she had married. She sensed danger in his calmness, in the way he looked at her, and in his complete lack of regret. Ananya stayed in her room the rest of the evening, feeling powerless, guilty, and terrified of what might happen next. Meera knew the situation was far worse than she had imagined. She began thinking about leaving him, taking her daughter somewhere safe, and starting over. But she also understood that Raghav was unpredictable, and any wrong step could provoke a reaction neither of them could handle. The truth had finally come to light, but with it came a new fear that settled over the household, like an unseen storm waiting to break. After Meera confronted Raghav, the entire energy inside the house shifted. The tension became so thick that even silence felt threatening. Meera moved carefully around the home, trying not to provoke him, while Ananya kept her distance, staying in her room as much as possible. What had once been a normal household now felt like a place filled with fear, suspicion, and unspoken danger. Every sound seemed louder, every movement more watched, and every hour heavier than the last. Raghav behaved differently after Meera learned the truth. Instead of calming down or showing regret, he became more controlling and unpredictable. He stopped pretending to be the polite, responsible husband he once showed to the world. Now, he monitored Meera's phone, checked her messages, and questioned her about every call she received. He wanted to know where she went after work, why she came home late, and who she spoke to. His questions came fast, one after another, as if he was terrified of losing control. Meera felt suffocated, but she kept her fear hidden. She didn't want to alarm Ananya any further. She quietly began planning to leave Raghav, hoping to escape the toxic environment before it turned into something more dangerous. She looked up shelters for women, searched for support groups, and tried to understand how to protect herself and her daughter without alerting him. She saved small amounts of money in a cloth pouch inside her closet, praying Raghav wouldn't find it. Each night, she lay awake thinking about possible ways out, but every plan seemed risky. Ananya noticed her mother's growing stress. She too felt the weight of Raghav's constant presence. He appeared unexpectedly in hallways, stood silently near the kitchen doorway, or walked around the house at odd hours. She heard his footsteps late at night as he checked each room. Sometimes she sensed him staring at her from across the living room, not saying anything, just watching. She often wondered if he already knew she had confessed everything to her mother. Neighbors began noticing changes as well. Meera, once friendly and cheerful during community events, stopped attending gatherings. She avoided casual conversations and went straight home after work. Ananya, who used to chat with classmates outside the apartment, now rushed indoors, afraid Raghav might be observing from a window. The vibrant energy that once existed in the family slowly faded, replaced by a quiet dread. One evening, Meera attempted to call a women's support group while Raghav was in the shower. Her hands shook as she explained her situation in whispered sentences. The support worker on the other end offered an appointment and safety instructions. Meera put the phone down quickly, terrified Raghav might step out and overhear something. She deleted the call history immediately. Raghav's behavior became even more unstable over the next few days. He walked around with a strange intensity in his eyes, as if he sensed that control was slipping away from him. He searched the house more often, checked drawers, and scanned the living room as though expecting to find something hidden. Meera felt a growing sense of urgency, knowing that any delay could put them in deeper danger. The home no longer felt like a home. It was a place waiting for a storm to break, a place where fear lived in every corner. Meera and Ananya's hope for escape felt fragile, but it was the only thing they held on to as they prepared for whatever might come next, unaware that the situation was moving closer to a point of no return. The night before Meera's scheduled meeting with the Women as Support Group arrived with an unsettling stillness. The winter air outside was cold, but inside the house, the tension felt even colder. Meera tried to behave normally, preparing dinner and pretending not to worry, but her hands trembled as she moved around the kitchen. She kept glancing at the clock, counting the hours left until morning. When she planned to take Ananya and finally step out of the nightmare her home had become, Raghav sensed something unusual in her behavior. He watched her from across the room with a suspicious intensity, noticing every little detail. He had been growing more paranoid every day, and now he observed Meera as if trying to catch a hidden secret. Ananya stayed in her room, uneasy and restless, feeling the tension rising but not knowing exactly why this night felt different from all the others. Later that night, after everyone pretended to settle into their rooms, Meera placed her phone on silent and hid it under her pillow. She closed her eyes, trying to calm her racing heart. She knew she had taken a huge risk by contacting the support group, but she also knew that staying silent would destroy their lives even more. She began praying silently for strength, unaware that Raghav was still awake, pacing slowly through the hallway. Near midnight, a soft vibration from the phone alerted Meera that the support group had sent a confirmation message. She reached for the screen, but Raghav was already standing outside the bedroom door. The small glow from the phone caught his attention instantly. The moment he saw the notification, everything inside him exploded with rage. Years of frustration, insecurity, and obsession collided in a single violent moment. Raghav stormed into the room, his anger overpowering any last trace of reason. Meera tried to step back, but he grabbed the phone, saw the name of the support organization, and realized she was planning to leave him. His face twisted with fury, and the situation spiraled out of control in seconds. His resentment, fear of losing control, and growing instability all erupted in a violent attack that Meera could not defend herself against. The room filled with chaos, and the sound of the struggle echoed through the house. Ananya woke up in shock when she heard the disturbance. Confused and terrified, she rushed toward her mother's room, but froze when she saw the horrifying scene unfolding before her. She felt her entire world collapse as she realized that her worst fears had become reality. Panic took over, and she knew she had only a few seconds to save herself. Without thinking, Ananya turned and ran toward the back door. Her legs shook as she sprinted through the cold air, not bothering to grab shoes or a coat. The only thought in her mind was to escape before Raghav noticed her presence. She reached the neighbor's house and banged on the door until someone opened it. Her terrified expression and trembling body were enough to make them call the police immediately. Back inside the house, the silence after the struggle felt eerie. Meera lay lifeless, and Raghav stood breathing heavily, staring at the result of his own rage. Realizing what he had done, he panicked. Instead of surrendering or checking on anyone, he grabbed a few items, fled through the front door, and disappeared into the night. By the time police arrived, the house had turned into a scene of tragedy. The officers found Meera's body and immediately secured Ananya in protective custody. The calm suburban neighborhood was shaken, and every neighbor watched in shock as the investigation began. Ananya, overwhelmed and traumatized, tried to explain everything she had held inside for months. The night that was supposed to bring freedom had instead brought irreversible loss, marking the beginning of a desperate manhunt and a long journey toward justice. When the police reached the Sharma residence, the scene was already frozen in shock. The door was half open, lights were still on, and the silence inside the house felt unnatural. Officers entered carefully, scanning each corner before discovering Meera's lifeless body. The sight immediately confirmed that the situation was far worse than a domestic dispute. It was clear that something violent and intentional had taken place. Every officer felt the urgency of capturing the person responsible before he disappeared completely. Raghav was nowhere to be found. The house showed signs of a hurried escape, an overturned chair, scattered keys, and a missing jacket that he likely grabbed on his way out. The back door was untouched, meaning he had walked right out into the neighborhood after the incident. Police quickly notified nearby patrols, surrounding streets, and the highway access points. A full manhunt began before sunrise. Within hours, helicopters circled the area, dogs traced scent trails, and officers searched every abandoned building in the neighborhood. Meanwhile, Ananya was taken to a safe location. She sat in a warm blanket inside the police station, surrounded by officers who gently encouraged her to share what she had been through. Her hands shook uncontrollably as she tried to speak. The trauma of the night, the months of manipulation, and the shock of losing her mother weighed heavily on her. She felt scared, guilty, and exhausted, as if her body had turned numb. A counselor stayed with her, helping her breathe and guiding her through the process of giving her statement. Her testimony revealed the full extent of Raghav's manipulation and control. She explained how he had watched her every move, slowly isolating her from friends and twisting her emotions until she felt trapped. She described how her mother discovered the truth and how everything escalated rapidly once Raghav realized he was losing control of the household. As the investigators listened, they understood that this was not a crime committed in a sudden moment of rage. It had been building quietly for months, fueled by Raghav's possessiveness and obsession with dominance. Detectives collected evidence from the house fingerprints, phone records, messages, and financial documents. They pieced together Raghav's behavior in the days leading up to the incident. His internet searches revealed signs of paranoia, questions about leaving the country, and inquiries about remote border crossings. This information convinced them that Raghav might attempt to flee the United States if he hadn't already started. News channels across Texas soon picked up the story. Raghav's face appeared on local broadcasts, alerting the public to be cautious and to report any sightings. Posters were printed and distributed within hours. Gas stations, motels, bus stops, and shopping centers all displayed his photograph. The community felt unsettled, knowing that a dangerous, unpredictable man was still roaming freely. During this time, Ananya remained under close protection. Officers ensured she had no contact with outsiders, and her location was kept confidential. The trauma of the night lingered in her mind, and she struggled to understand how her life had changed so suddenly. She had lost her mother, her home, and her sense of safety all at once. Though the police reassured her that they were close to finding Raghav, she feared what he might do next. Days passed without any confirmed sightings, raising concerns that he may have traveled far. Investigators expanded the search across state lines, contacting authorities in neighboring regions and checking transportation logs. Every hour counted. The search had become a race against time, and the tension grew heavier with each passing moment. Raghav had vanished into the darkness, but the investigation was far from over. The truth of what he had done was spreading quickly, and soon a new lead would emerge, one that would bring the chase closer to its end. 3 days after the murder, the investigation finally reached a turning point. Police departments across several states had been alerted, but Raghav's trail was fading. He had been careful from the moment he fled the neighborhood, avoiding cameras, main highways, and public places where someone might recognize him. Investigators believed he had a plan in mind long before the incident, which made the search even more urgent. Just when officers began worrying that he might have slipped out of Texas, a call came from a motel owner in rural New Mexico. The motel owner, who had seen Raghav's face on the news, reported that a man matching his description had checked in under a false name. He seemed restless and avoided conversation, keeping his face hidden under a hood. The owner became suspicious when the guest paid in cash and asked unusual questions about buses heading toward the border. When the police received the tip, they immediately sent a team to the location, hoping they weren't too late. As the officers approached the small motel, they found the area quiet and nearly deserted. The cold desert wind blew dust across the parking lot, and the flickering neon sign above the office added to the eerie stillness. They checked the guest list and confirmed that someone using a fake identity had checked in only a few hours earlier. But when they searched the room, it was empty. The bed was unmade, the bathroom light left on, and a half-eaten sandwich sat on the table. It looked like someone had left in a hurry. While searching the room, detectives found documents scattered on the floor maps, handwritten notes, and lists of bus stops. There were also signs of a struggle, but nothing violent enough to involve force. Instead, it looked like Raghav had been robbed. A broken zipper from a small bag lay near the bed, and a wallet with no cash was found under the chair. Investigators quickly realized what had happened. Raghav had been double-crossed by someone he trusted to help him escape. Based on what they knew, he had likely contacted a smuggler to guide him toward a distant border crossing. But the smuggler saw an opportunity. After taking Raghav's money, he had abandoned him in the cold desert night with no vehicle, no cash, and no way to continue his journey. This unexpected twist turned Raghav from a calculating fugitive into a desperate man wandering unfamiliar terrain. Officers began expanding the search around the motel, scanning the desert with flashlights and thermal cameras. They soon discovered footprints leading away from the building toward a stretch of barren land behind the property. The prints looked uneven, as if the person walking had been stumbling. A few meters further, they found a torn piece of fabric snagged on a shrub, likely from the jacket Raghav wore during his escape. As dawn approached, a patrol car reported seeing movement near an abandoned service shed about a mile away. Officers moved in carefully. Inside, they found Raghav crouched behind old crates, exhausted, dehydrated, and barely able to stand. The cold desert night had drained him completely. When the officers surrounded him, he attempted to flee, but his body gave up before he could run. His capture was quick and almost anticlimactic compared to the chaos he had caused. The man who had terrorized his family and evaded police for days now looked defeated and fragile. The unexpected betrayal by the smuggler had ended his escape long before authorities reached him. Within hours, he was transported back to Texas under heavy security. News networks broadcast the update, bringing a sense of relief to the community, and especially to Ananya, who had lived with constant fear since the night she lost her mother. But although Raghav had been caught, the long process of justice was still ahead. The final chapter of this tragic story was about to unfold in the courtroom, where the truth would finally be laid bare for the world to see. Raghav's capture brought a wave of relief to the police department, the local community, and most importantly, to Ananya. But relief did not erase the pain or the fear she had carried for months. The journey ahead was long, filled with legal procedures, emotional recovery, and the quiet struggle to rebuild her sense of safety. As Raghav was brought back to Texas under strict security, the atmosphere in the state shifted. What had begun as a manhunt had now become a quest for justice. The police immediately placed Raghav in a high-security facility, ensuring he had no chance of escaping again. Investigators continued gathering evidence, building a timeline of events that stretched from the early stages of manipulation to the night of the murder. Every detail became crucial. Financial records, messages, notes found in the motel room, and testimonies from neighbors all added to the case against him. The prosecution aimed to show that his actions were not simply impulsive, but part of a calculated pattern of control and abuse. Meanwhile, Ananya struggled through her grief. She attended counseling sessions arranged by victim support services. The counselors gently guided her through conversations about trauma, fear, and the guilt she carried, even though none of what happened was her fault. She spent many days in silence, replaying memories of her mother, feeling the weight of everything she had lost. Her mother had been her only family, her anchor, and now she faced the world alone. Support groups became a safe space where she met others who had survived violence and manipulation. Slowly, she realized she was not alone in her experience. The court proceedings began a few months later. The courtroom was filled with reporters, community members, and legal experts following the case closely. Raghav was brought in wearing a pale expression, no longer the confident man who once controlled every corner of his home. As evidence was presented, the jury heard about his manipulation, the financial transfers, his growing paranoia, and the violent final night that ended Meera's life. Medical examiners, detectives, and counselors all testified, painting a detailed picture of the months leading to the tragedy. Ananya testified through a remote video connection to avoid facing Raghav directly. Her voice trembled at first, but as she continued, she found strength in sharing the truth. She explained the emotional pressure she had lived under, the fear she felt every day, and the moment she realized her mother was gone. Her testimony became one of the most powerful moments in the trial, leaving the courtroom silent. After weeks of hearings and review, the court reached a verdict. Raghav was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The judge emphasized the severity of his actions and the irreversible damage he had caused. For the first time since the incident, Ananya felt a sense of closure, though the emptiness in her heart remained. In the years that followed, Ananya worked to rebuild her life. She completed her studies with the help of scholarships and support from local organizations. Motivated by her painful past, she began volunteering with groups that supported victims of domestic violence and emotional manipulation. Eventually, she created her own foundation, dedicated to helping immigrant families recognize early signs of control, abuse, and isolation. Her mother's memory guided her decisions every step of the way. What had begun as a story of fear and loss became a journey of strength and healing. Meera's tragedy turned into a mission that helped others find hope, safety, and the courage to break free from hidden suffering.